Buenas and half a day, everyone. Today's oversight hearing by the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and your Guam National Guard is called to order. Today is Monday, June 15, 2026, and the time is now 8:31 a.m. Chamorro Standard Time. For the record, and in accordance with the open government law, notices for today's oversight hearing were sent on June 4, 2026, and again on June 10, 2026. Notices for this hearing were also published on the Guam Legislature website and the Guam Public Notices website. Joining us here are members of the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and Guam National Guard. I'd like to introduce the Vice Speaker and also the co-chair of this committee, Tony Atta. Thank you again for being with us this morning. And before we proceed with the discussion, I'd first like to provide some general rules of conduct for this morning's oversight hearing, which shall be as follows. Written comments or presentations shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written comments for photocopying. Comments may be read and lengthy presentations should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Those offering comments will be allowed to present written or oral testimony in the 5-minute time frame allotted. I please ask you would respect the committee's request. Once you are done, please remain in the room for questions or additional comments as may be desired by members of the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and Guam National Guard, and other members of the legislature. Questions and comments shall be confined to the nature of the agenda. The agenda for this morning's oversight hearing is designed for the committee to receive an update regarding the corrective action plan relative to the Office of Civil Defense and Office of Homeland Security, FEMA grants covered by the 2023 Premier Group Audit, Office of Public Accountability Report number 24-07 from June of 2024, and the Office of Public Accountability Report number 24-12 from December 2024. For the record, the committee requested the attendance and participation of the respective heads of the following departments and agencies: the Office of the Governor of Guam, the Office of Civil Defense, the Office of Homeland Security, the Guam Recovery Office, the Department of Administration, the Bureau of Budget Management and Research, and the Office of Public Accountability. At this time, the chair requests for these individuals, if they are present, to please take a seat before the committee, and they are already there. And before speaking, if I could ask to please wait to be recognized by the chair and state your name for record purposes. The order of questioning will begin with the panel of senators who shall each have 5 minutes to ask their questions. The time allotted to each senator does not include responses that are provided by those testifying. Personal inferences about the character or motive of any senator or any individual commenting is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room for this morning's oversight hearing. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form or decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and/or may be asked to leave or be escorted and removed from the room. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room. Colleagues and those who are following today's oversight hearing, the committee organized today's discussion to receive an update from Government of Guam officials regarding corrective actions linked to federal and local audits, which I referenced just moments ago. According to OPA report number 24-07, FEMA's ongoing concerns about Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense's ability to properly manage and administer federal grant awards prompted them to contract a private auditing firm, the Premier Audit Group Services, Inc., or what's also known as the Premier Group, to conduct a program-specific audit. The report noted that auditors were unable to confirm or verify the costs incurred by GHS OCD, as well as determine whether the costs were allowable and allocable. As a result, questioned costs totaling $34.7 million and was also subject to FEMA's decision whether or not to sustain the findings and have GHS OCD repay disallowed cost. Shortly after being elected to this particular office, OPA report number 24-12 concluded that GHS OCD was non-compliant with applicable federal and local laws, personnel rules, and SOPs relative to overtime costs incurred from FY 2018 to FY 2023. Overtime was unauthorized, unreasonable and unallocable and was not supported. Additionally, the lack of SOPs, segregation of duties, and prior audit findings of questionable activity heightened fraud risk at GHS OCD. Through information obtained from external sources, the committee learned last month that all FEMA grants for Guam were placed on restrictive drawdown status. To confirm this assertion, the committee sent a Freedom of Information Act request to the Office of the Governor on May 15, 2026. On May 21, 2026, the Governor's Office requested for additional time to respond. The Governor's Office responded to the committee's FOIA request a week later on May 29, 2026. The information provided to the committee included a letter FEMA sent on May 12, 2026 to the Governor's Chief of Staff, informing him that all federal grants awarded by FEMA Region 9 to the government of Guam were being placed on restrictive drawdown status effective immediately. According to FEMA, under the restrictive drawdown status, agencies must submit supporting documentation to their respective FEMA program offices for review and approval prior to the release of any grant funds. FEMA's decision to place all grants awarded by FEMA Region 9 on restrictive drawdown status is in response to long-standing and significant concerns regarding the government of Guam's management of federal grant funds. Now, FEMA identified 3 issues. 1, since 2019, Emergency Management Performance Grant, or the EMPG, and Homeland Security Grant Program, HSGP, awards have been subject to restrictions due to findings from FEMA monitoring conducted for fiscal years 2016 to 2018. During this period, Guam substantiated costs for less than 5% of obligated EMPG funding. 2, the 2023 Premier Group Audit identified over $40 million in question costs and 11 compliance issues, none of which have been fully resolved to date. This according to FEMA. And 3, in 2025, several staff members were indicted for alleged misuse of federal funds. Today, the committee is focused on establishing a clear understanding of the steps that the executive branch has taken to safeguard federal resources through a corrective action plan and verifiable follow-through. If these resources are not handled according to FEMA requirements, they have the potential to jeopardize critically federally funded preparedness, mitigation, and recovery grants moving forward. The committee made it clear to OCD and OHS leadership during our earlier oversight hearings in January of 2025 and February of 2026 that compliance with applicable federal and local statutes and regulations are critical to our emergency management infrastructure. Without encroaching on executive branch responsibilities, the committee continues to support our first responders by way of legislative oversight. The committee conducted a mission check in May of 2025. We communicated our concerns regarding working conditions at the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, in Agana Heights, including mold remediation and needed repairs to the EOC backup generator and elevator systems. And the committee made our position known regarding federal decertification of the Marianas Regional Fusion Center Secure Room and their broader impacts on our ability to store, process, reproduce, destroy, transmit, receive, and discuss classified national security information. Our efforts, quite frankly, are not politically driven. The work of this committee is not aimed at weakening organizations that are already challenged with unfavorable audit findings, government corruption allegations, and most recently had all FEMA grants placed on restrictive drawdown status. Our collective interest is in strengthening emergency management services now, so that Guam is as prepared as we can be before, during, and after a disaster, particularly with the help of critical federal resources. Our concerns and our consistent oversight efforts recognize the 5 guiding principles for improvement across FEMA, which were put forward in the final report issued on May 7, 2026 by the President's Council to assess the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The guiding principles aim to, 1, equip states, local governments, tribes, and territories to lead disaster response with the federal government in a supporting role. 2, to enhance critical federal programs and resources to support communities. 3, realign the criteria for federal disaster assistance. 4, replace the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program with a 2-phase funding structure. And 5, to streamline the Individual Assistance Program into a single direct payment program. The committee appreciates in advance your cooperation and candor as we engage today with the objective of building up emergency management services. This oversight hearing should help all in this room to acknowledge the gaps in our emergency management system and help establish a path forward to fix what's broken together. Thank you so very much. And at this time, the committee requests the Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Ed Pakaigui, to swear in agency representatives before they offer comments and answer questions today from senators on today's oversight hearing agenda.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Mr. Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pakaigui. So thank you very much. And we're going to begin with comments from this panel. And since she's here in the middle, I'll go ahead and I'll defer and have our Homeland Security Advisor, Esther Agagi, to begin. And thank you and welcome to the Guam Congress Building.
Havade and good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Buenas and Havade, Chairman Gumataotao and members of this committee. I am Esther J.C. Agagi, Guam's Homeland Security Advisor, and I am here today to provide an update on our corrective action plan responding to the 2023 Premier Group Audit. I want to begin with the distinction that matters most, because the record contains 2 federal actions that are easily confused. In January, FEMA approved our corrective action plan. In May, FEMA placed our grants on restricted drawdown. These are not contradictory. The first is a judgment that our plan is sound. The second is a control mechanism that keeps federal funds flowing while we prove that soundness over time. One speaks to our plan, the other speaks to a clock. That clock is the part I ask you to understand clearly. To lift this restriction, FEMA requires 3 consecutive years of clean monitoring and a sustained low error rate across multiple testing cycles. And by federal design, those conditions cannot be met in months, no matter how fast or how well we perform. So, the relevant question this morning is not whether the restriction is lifted, it is whether the corrective actions within our control are being done. They are. And let me be concrete. Our timekeeping procedures and pay period audits have been running since 2023. Our grants management staff completed federal grants management course certification last August. Quarterly internal audits across transactions, procurement, travel, and disbursements have been live since the middle of last year. And in December, the Office of the Chief of Staff, not my office alone, stood up a grants monitoring committee, placing accountability above the agency that drew the original findings. We have named authorizing officials and certifying officers, closing the certification gap the audit identified. None of this happened in isolation. The plan FEMA approved was built line by line with FEMA. Their specialists offered dozens of specific recommendations, and our integrated matrix documents our response to each. When we needed more time, FEMA granted a 90-day extension and reaffirmed its technical assistance. This is not the posture of a regulator that has given up on us. It is the posture of a partner rebuilding trust alongside us. And I would offer this committee this. The audit found real weaknesses, and we have not minimized a single one. But the honest measure of this government is not the existence of findings, it is what we have done since. The documentation is complete, the controls are operating, and the federal relationship is active and collaborative. And we welcome your oversight because it holds us to exactly the standard our island deserves. May God continue to protect this island, guide our work, bless our community. Sizus Masi, I welcome your questions.
Thank you so much, Esther. Is anyone else going to have any statement to the committee? No? Okay, so let me go ahead and just, we're going to just jump right into the question and answer portion of the oversight, beginning with myself and then the committee members. And I'd like to also welcome to our hearing today, Senator Chris Duenas. Senator, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for your continued leadership as chairman of the Finance Committee of the Guam Legislature. Again, colleagues, you will each have 5 minutes, but not including the responses that are provided by members of the panel. And I'm just going to go ahead and just jump in if I can, and let me just start with this. A letter signed off by the Governor of Guam dated January 8th, 2026, permanently transferred the OCD administrator to the Department of Public Works. On April 17, 26, the governor's office rescinded its January 8th letter. Then a letter from the governor dated May 11, 2026, rescinded the governor's October 24th, 2025 detailed assignment of the HSA as the acting OCD administrator. The committee was provided a copy of the section of the Government of Guam Personnel Rules and Regulations prohibiting an employee in an unclassified position or an individual employed under a contract from being detailed to a position in the classified service. The OCD administrator is a position in the classified service. So for the record, if you can help us understand, who is the Office of Civil Defense Administrator or otherwise in charge of the Office of Civil Defense?
Senator, thank you for that question. So, sir, I am in charge of the Office of Civil Defense, first the Office of Homeland Security and Civil Defense. And I am not the administrator. However, the governor has issued the guidance that I am in charge of the agency.
Okay, thank you. The RACI matrix that your office submitted to this committee on May 19th of 2026, this was 8 days after the governor rescinded your detail. She still listed you as OCD administrator alongside Mr. Charles Esteves, who has, for the record, has been indicted in local court. Can you explain why that document was submitted with those names and who specifically authorized its submission, again, for this particular issue?
Yes, sir. At the time this document was created, sir, we were still under the direction that the administrator, who is Mr. Esteves, was going to retain his title as administrator. However, his presence is still unknown at the Office of Civil Defense. You know, the work still has to be done, Senator, so we're still here and we're doing the work that needs to be done because, you know, work stoppage is not going to do anyone any good. So the work continues.
All right, thank you. During your OHS OCD oversight hearing this past February 2nd, 2026, agency leadership informed this committee that FEMA's approval of its corrective action plan on January 21st of 2026 demonstrated federal confidence in its commitment to improvement. What specifically triggered the federal entity to place all grants on restrictive drawdown status effective May 12th, 2026, just a little over 3 months after approving Guam's corrective action plan? Now, I'll say this, that the CAP approval letter says FEMA had confidence in your commitment, but not your compliance.
Senator, there could be a number of reasons why FEMA issued the letter of restrictive drawdowns. And I have to add that a restricted drawdown is a cash management control and reimbursement on documentation, not a new finding, and it does not deobligate funds or assert new violations. I will, however, add that we have always been on a restrictive drawdown since taking office in 2023. And so this is nothing new to the Guam Office of Homeland Security and Civil Defense. This is the way we have been operating on the grants that we have been awarded. And I can, my grants manager, who Ms. Lucy Perez, she can provide more detail on that process.
Yeah, I'm not looking for the detail here, and we may ask that in a second, but just trying to understand the action from the federal government. Let me just, if I can then, and if you can keep it, brief, but can you identify even one of the 12 CAP findings that FEMA has certified as fully resolved?
So there are several areas of that CAP plan that FEMA has offered advice for us to work on. We have submitted our completed CAP plan, and it is under review by FEMA right now. In the last week of August, they will be here to conduct an in-person review. And it will be then when we know whether or not our actions taken that are identified in that corrective action plan have been resolved.
So to date, you have no confirmation if any single one of those has been?
Yes, we do, sir. I understand you have a copy of our corrective action plan?
I do. So, but for the record, can you tell us how many of the 12 points have you guys actually fully resolved?
Okay. Well, to start off with, sir, we have some standard operating procedures that have been already in place that FEMA has reviewed and has approved. We also have our timekeeping procedures. We also have quarterly reviews. What we have now that we didn't have then is we now have a financial management system accountability in place that my finance team lead, Mr. Cabana, has put together. And so that is something that was not present when those audits had occurred. But we have that in place right now to track and trace every single federal dollar that was awarded to the Office of Guam Homeland Security and Civil Defense. And the grants that were mentioned in that memo that you had just read, what we now have is a database tracking all the money that's attached to those grants. And Mr. Cabana can speak in detail of which grants you would like to know about.
So that you've named 3. So far 3?
Go ahead, Ms. Lucy.
So your question about in the audit findings, can we name some that have been completed? I would point over to finding 2023-02, which deals with the timesheet. When you look at 2.2, 2.3, and even 2.1, we've gone through that process. And in our meetings with the grants management team from FEMA, they've accepted that. So that's one of the findings. And then the second one will be findings 2023-03 in terms of 3.3, training finance personnel on CFR 200 requirements. We've completed that, sir, also by ensuring, and this happened last August, and there's going to be a refresher coming up in the summer on individuals that are working with grants to take the FEMA grants management monitoring training, which was done online. It was 3 hours every day for about 6 weeks. The individuals that took the training had to also take a test at the end of the course just to ensure there's understanding. So that's just a couple of the findings that we've been working on that we know that FEMA is happy with, and it's in that chart where it specifically says that the action appears to address the recommendations. And we've also, to back that up, ensured that there are SOPs, which, by the way, is voluminous, but I did provide it on a flash drive to staff so that if you wish to go back later on and review it, it's there. And it's the same documents that you have on that flash drive. It's the same documents that FEMA has.
Okay, so for the record, I'm looking for a single number. How many, and right now I've heard 4 of the 12 items have been completed at this point. Is that where is that where we're at now?
If I may, sir, so those are 4, but in addition to the 4, if I may, finding 2023-05 regards salary changes or salary charges. This is regarding the methodology that needed to happen, and that's actually complete, and FEMA says there are no changes are required, and that we have provided monthly salary reviews continuous since May of 2025. In addition to that, finding 2023-12, which is budget monitoring, we have a grant monitoring committee that was established by the Office of the Chief of Staff, and that was established in December of 2025, and our first meeting was held on December 10th, 2025. So yes, sir, I'm counting 4 of those 12 have already been approved and satisfied according to FEMA's review.
All right, thank you, Esther. Now the corrective action plan, again, approved in January 2026, again, includes implementation of quarterly internal audits. I think you've talked about that this morning. Again, designed to review budget adherence and detect any deviations. So between the release of the 2023 FEMA-initiated audit and January of 2026, what extent did the government of Guam implement internal audits for one or more of the findings, and what technical assistance from FEMA, if any, was sought by your office to ensure local efforts aligned with federal expectations? Do you have any internal audits at all? At least with one.
If I may speak, Senator.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, my name. We do have some. The last internal audit we had was a couple of years ago with our OPA and also DOA. They came up with internal audits. That was the last audit that they had. During that course of that review, right now we are implementing policies or procedures as far as how to do a better control on all our expenditures. Yeah, so we haven't had recently other than the last a couple of years ago.
Okay, so I think you mentioned the financial or finding 2023-03. Again, mandatory training for finance personnel on specific CFR requirements, including the SOP, including the approval process. Again, you committed to ensuring follow-up staff training to address the audit findings. I think we talked a little bit about it today. So recognizing none of 10 filled positions identified in your staffing pattern for FY 2027 are finance-specific positions, which members of your staff, outside of Mr. Cabana, are engaged in the mandatory training for finance personnel, and what support, if any, have been offered or requested of other government of Guam entities to include DOA, BBMR, and the Office of Public Accountability?
Thank you for that question, Senator. So, as mentioned earlier, we had our finance team take the Fundamentals of Grants Management training back in August of 2025, and we are now just pending the next scheduled training for the 2026 timeframe. But may I also answer your question regarding what kind of internal audits have we been performing in
Yes,
addition
please.
to what Mr. Cabana? So we actually have recurring quarterly internal audits, and we have been doing that since August timeframe of 2025. And this includes transactions, procurement, travel disbursements, and salary allocation. In audits above our agency, sir, we, as I said before, that we have a grants monitoring committee established by the Chief of Staff. We also have implemented authorizing officials and certifying officers. They have been formally designated, and this is a structural fix to the certification gap that was in finding 2023-1, and then our matrix itself reinforces the segregation of duties because it lists different positions. For example, the HSA, the Civil Defense Administrator, the GRO Director, the CAP Monitor, and the Finance. Each of them carry distinct roles, and this is also in response to the finding 2023-03 and 2023-07. So those are some of the measures and some of the efforts that we have been implementing since the premier audit in the 2023 premier audit.
So, but then again, in terms of staffing, you have, I know Joe's doing, but there's none of the 10 are finance people? No technical assistants? Is DOA, BVMAR, anyone offering up any of that?
If I may speak, Senator, again, none of the, under Homeland, we don't have, per se, someone who's handling the fiscal side. And that's why I took over as far as assisting, as far as making sure that we are all in compliance with our audit. So I'm the one that's handling the fiscal side of Homeland as well.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is something publicly that I made mention so on numerous occasions that the executive branch should be putting, based on this audit, based on the FEMA action, we should be putting people, in, at least one. I'm a little surprised, but let me just move on. But again, trying to encourage the executive branch to shore up some of the finance side of your house. I know Joe's there. I'm not diminishing your role, Joe, but you need help too.
I was tasked by the front office to prepare the system, and that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you so much. Okay, now going back to the RACI matrix, it shows DOA listed as consulted for actions. Can you provide, I mean, if you can, back to this committee, just if you write this down, can you provide documentation of any formal meeting, correspondence, or technical engagement with DOA on these items? And if the LD 705 was completed in August 2025, why is the follow-up training for FY 2026 still listed as pending in a document that was submitted to this committee in May of 2026? If you can get that in writing, I would prefer back to this committee relative to that, okay? Let me move on to the procurement procedures. Again, finding 2023-06, again, requires you to provide training sessions for the updated procurement SOPs, and you mentioned this morning about the GFMIS functionality and to emphasize compliance with grants. Can you tell us this morning what portion of your staff have completed one or more of the 4 procurement modules of procurement basic training, and has any of the personnel who are required has not received the procurement training engaged in any procurement in violation of our procurement training policy? So again, has anyone on the team completed one or more of the modules for procurement?
Yes, sir. There are 2 members at this table who have completed the grants management training, and there were several others, but those individuals are no longer assigned to the Office of Homeland Security or Civil Defense.
Okay, so of the 2 at the table, have you all completed 1 or all 4 procurement modules?
1. And Mr. Cabana probably has 5.
1 and 1.
1, yes, Senator, 1.
Okay, thank you. Let me, I have 1, 2, just a couple more questions, and then I'll turn this over to the committee. And before I go any further, let me just recognize or welcome Senator Sabina Perez. Thank you for being with us this morning. This is on travel, undocumented travel expenses. This is finding 2023-08. Again, SOP for travel documentation based on the May 7th, 2025 letter from FEMA to the government of Guam. it found that your per diem for the 2021 Pacific Executive Leadership Program was provided to attendees by the Center for Homeland Defense and Security. Accordingly, your request for per diem reimbursement was determined to be duplicative. Now, I'm just going to be very blunt. Did you knowingly seek to be reimbursed twice for the same per diem request? And are there any other instances of at least maybe during the last 24 months where FEMA similarly questioned and ultimately denied any travel-related funding requests?
Senator, this was done way before we came on board, but I am happy to report that no travel has been executed since we have been taking over the grants management. So, sir, I'm not certain if the people who were administering or overseeing the travel portion were aware that they were submitting for duplicate.
Okay.
Senator, and for the travel, I just want to clarify. I'm sorry, Lucy. So, for example, HSGP, we've never had any travel denied. As a matter of fact, that's one of the strictest criteria, because before any travel authorization can be written up, we must go back to our grantor, and in my case for Homeland Security, it's Mr. Mitchell, and we have to justify. It's an 8-page document, and only when we get the approval letter would BBMR even work on the TA. So I can say that from 2023 forward, we have a process. It is followed. And for the EMPG side, for the ones that I did have oversight over, that also was documented very well. And we worked with FEMA to ensure that trainings or conferences that were sponsored by FEMA, we had a process.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Okay, OP8 report number 2024-04 found that your agency owes $8.4 million to the general fund, recognizing that the general fund has been paying for your operating costs. They also found that the general fund paid $71.3 million in expenditures under the Office of Homeland Security Civil Defense Operations, FEMA recovery, tsunami grant programs, and was only reimbursed $62.9 million by FEMA. Of the $8.4 million, $7.8 million was for operations under the EMPG and HSGP that have yet to be reimbursed by FEMA. It's these over expenditures supporting DOA's internal audit section findings on the lack of monitoring budgets and system controls. And we discussed these same findings initially in January of last year. So again, I'll ask, what portion of the $8.4 million in general fund expenditures has since been reimbursed by FEMA?
We received out of the $8 million we received from FEMA, based on the information that we gathered, it's about $500,000. For what we've seen as far as the others that were not authorized or unallowable, I haven't got the detailed information on that, Senator.
So, Joe, $500,000 from 8.4.
8.4, yes. We're still being pending right now as far as reviewing. I know there's other grants on the EMPG as well and the HHP that are being reviewed and going through the process as well.
Okay, and based on a May 7, 2025 FEMA letter informing the government of Guam that the agency, federal agency, authorized just $280,000 out of $1.181 million worth of claims submitted by the local government, did FEMA authorize additional claims subsequent to their May 2025 response to the government of Guam's drawdown request? And if so, how much more in local expenditures were approved by FEMA? Is it just the $500,000 amount? Is all that they approved?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again, Senator?
Okay, this is, FEMA told you all back in May of last year that they only authorized $280,000 out of $1.1 million worth of claims that you submitted. Did they authorize any additional claims subsequent to their May 2025 response to the government of Guam's drawdown request? And if so, how much more in local expenditures were approved by FEMA?
The date of the letter that you're reviewing, once again? All right. So May 7, 2025, we did receive, or the Chief of Staff and the HSA did receive a letter from FEMA, and this is what we've been working on what they approved for the EMPG grant for 2020. So what was approved, final amount to draw down, was $280,909.66, and that is correct. For the HSGP section of 2020, they were looking at approximately $30,000, and this is looking at expenses that occurred within the period of performance. We are currently working on 22 HSGP in getting those expenses reviewed and getting reimbursed. For the 23 EMPG, we are working first on ensuring that our work plan gets approved, and then all expenses, which Mr. Cabana has already tracked, will be able to submit for reimbursement to the grantor. So the process is we get all the invoices, we get all the timesheets, we send it to our grantor takes a look at it. When they approve it, they send us a letter. We send it over to the federal program section at DOA, and we set up a date and time of when that window will be open, and then that individual or the position will be able to go in and draw down that amount.
Okay, so let me just stick with that then. So that same letter, so what funding source did this government use to cover the difference of $840,000 or the adjusted unauthorized claim amount?
Senator, I'm sorry, but we can't answer that question.
All right,
We don't have any control over, we don't manhandle our funds, and we rely strictly on BBMR and DOA to help us with our finances.
All right, thank you, Esther, for that.
But
Okay.
Senator, if I may also, but we can I can explain as far as the other grants which is still pending from FEMA, which is the 23 MPG 24 and 25. Although we incurred some expenditures on these grants, we're just waiting for FEMA to award us a letter pending some narrative corrections on these grants. We are the 23 is ready about to be released. We just got we're just waiting for the word from them, and due to the shutdown with most recently by FEMA, they have not I think they just opened a couple of weeks ago. To such time we received a letter from them, but I can justify the expenditures which is on these grants. So we're just spending reimbursements on FEMA on these grants.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to questions from the panel, and I'll go ahead and speak, or I'll turn the mic over to the Vice Chair of this committee and the Vice Speaker of this legislature. Senator Ada, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the panel for being here this morning. Perhaps just a couple of questions and concerns as well. So, how's Homeland Security and Civil Defense operating currently?
Sir, we're operating on a daily basis with the staff that we do have on board. And luckily, we have some experienced staff members on board, and the work still needs to get done. So whoever has the skill sets to conduct and conduct that task willingly does it, and we'll pick up wherever we need to.
Especially, with the restriction on drawdowns, correct? And, I'm sure that perhaps funding is coming from the general fund to keep the operations going. Was there a complete turnover of staff up in Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense, or how are we remedying what the situation was in the past to how we're moving forward today?
Sir, I would say yes. There was a complete turnover of staff, and we still have a staff shortage. But thankfully, on-the-job training has given us a lot of experience, and with a lot of consulting with FEMA, we're able to conduct and we're able to complete the tasks with a lot of guidance. And if we need additional help or additional time, we're not shy to ask, and every time we ask, our partners at FEMA are willing to give us whatever time we need to submit reports, to look at grants, to look at open windows, and really we've been functioning with the staff that we do have.
And what is the current condition of the facilities? Where have upgrades been made to restrooms, the backup generator, the equipment, vehicles, things of that nature?
Sir, I'm happy to report that the Office of Homeland Security and Civil Defense is fully functional. We have addressed the issues, the sewer leakage, the elevator that was inoperable, the air conditioning system, the water, our water cooling system that also provides cooling to one of the air conditioning systems in one of the front main buildings. We have addressed every single item on the to fix list, and the office is fully functional. And it's great that it was, because we were definitely prepared when Super Typhoon Sinlaco came around, because had the office been in the same condition it was before we got it up to it is now, it would have been difficult to perform the duties of our response and recovery.
Yeah, and we're listening to the National Weather Service, and they're predicting more storms coming this way throughout the remaining of the year. So hopefully that the operations of Homeland Security and Civil Defense doesn't continue to be hampered, and that it continues to build upon what platform you guys have already developed and how you're moving forward. And I think that are there issues with grant funding and other fundings? Absolutely. I think what the corrective action plan that's going forward and what you guys are doing to implement it and strengthen the securities within Homeland Security and Civil Defense, that will make the difference between how, I guess, FEMA would turn around to continue to work with you. As long as our island and our people are not vulnerable to storms, because the lack of personnel or the lack of or the inactions of Homeland Security and Civil Defense due to the issues, I don't think that would be acceptable. So we just got to keep trying to work harder to ensure that we continue to improve. Is this going to be the end? Absolutely not. But I think that we just continue to move forward and get these things addressed as soon as possible. And with the personnel that you do have, hopefully that Mr. Cabano will be able to work out all those financial issues and work with the audits and streamline what processes need to be done, stricter control measures and expenditures and things of that nature. I think we'll be okay. But thank you for you guys being here this morning.
Thank you, sir. And if I may just add a period or an exclamation point to your statement, thank you very much. That's a pat on the back that we don't normally get.
Yeah.
For everything that we do many things in silence, but to get that pat on the back is powerful. So it's amazing what can be done when nobody cares who gets credit for it.
Exactly.
It's amazing what a disaster can do to people who are responsible for managing emergencies. Mm-hmm. And because that's the beauty of our culture, everyone comes together. And nobody cares what happens in the past. Everyone is focused on the here and now and the recovery. So disaster or no disaster, blue skies or gray skies, Guam's emergency management is top notch. They are an elite force is what I can say, because they care nothing about their own personal safety, but the safety of the people of Guam, their families, and they want resolution as soon as possible. So they will do whatever it takes to protect. So thank you again, Vice Speaker. Really appreciate that. But I submit to you, we are prepared, and we'll be prepared regardless of the situation, regardless of the disaster. Your emergency management recovery and response folks are prepared and are ready for anything that comes our way.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Vice Speaker, I also, as not only as personnel of Office of Homeland Security and Civil Defense, but as an ESF, an emergency support function, I want to formally thank you and everyone that has supported us. It hasn't just been our team, but also the team from BBMR. They have been lockstep next to us. The team from DOA, GSA, the CPO, the Chief Procurement Officer and her team, the deputy and the director, their payroll, they have been working with us side by side. And I tell you, Senlaco was a perfect example of how people got together, individuals got together, even the ESFs from other agencies. We all got together and we said, we have a mission, we have a task, and that's to protect, provide the people of Guam, which includes our family, right? So definitely, thank you very much, and that I know, those words would go very good for them also.
Thank you, Ms. Lucy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Vice Speaker. Senator Duenas, I'll turn the mic over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here. I'm going to direct the questions towards the May 12, 2026 letter addressed from FEMA to the Chief of Staff. First of all, Joe, how long have you been, and are you on what do you call that? Are you assigned to Civil Defense, and where do you come from?
Excuse me. Thank you, Senator. I'm actually the Guam Recovery Director who's handling all the FEMA grants under the public assistance grants that I'm handling. However, because of my experience, I volunteer to assist, and also with the front offices to assist Homeland in be able to look into all the financials, of Homeland and the fiscal side.
How long have you been there?
I've been there since working for Homeland. I started in 2023, January 2023.
Okay. So in directing my questions from here, and the concern I have is, let's start from the beginning. When did the corrective action plan start in terms of the efforts based on the findings?
Sir, thank you, Senator, for that question. The corrective action plan started shortly after the audit was completed, the 2023 audit conducted by Premier Group. And I believe we all started to put that plan together in August of 2023.
The reason why I do that is because this May 12, 2026 letter is notification that FEMA Region 9 is hereby notifying the Government of Guam effective immediately all federal grants awarded by FEMA Region 9, Government of Guam, are being placed on restrictive drawdown status. And the background rationale is what I want to lead to, and I want to find out why this jumped off the page. Since 2019, this is the background rationale. The Emergency Management Homeland Security Program awards have been subject to restrictions due to findings from FEMA monitoring conducted from 2016 to 2018, with costs less than 5% of obligated EMPG fundings. The 2023 Premier Group identified $40 million in question costs. Where are we in whittling down the $40 million on question costs?
Thank you, Senator. That's a two-part question. May I make a correction on when the corrective action plan was started? So we have a letter here that was addressed to the Premier Group, and we started our corrective action plan on April 5th, 2024.
Okay.
As to answer the first part of your question, sir, and Mr. Joe Cabana can probably answer the second part of your question. Oh, sir?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, as far as the findings that we had during the course of the Premier audit, currently right now, a big amount of those findings is related to the public assistance grants, but a big amount of that also is related to one of the events that we are currently right now being reviewed and working with our FEMA in getting those documents and also getting information. So we are very successful in that because one of our recipients is getting all the documents for us for additional documentation for FEMA so they can be able to finalize that review.
What amount of the identified $40 million has been justified to date?
For the other grants on the EMPG and the HHGP grants, we're still pulling out documents and getting those to justify those expenditures. As far as the public assistance grants, like I said earlier, is one of our subrecipients are giving that information, and that's close to about maybe $21 million that we're already pulling out the documents and being reviewed on public assistance.
But none of that $40 million to date has been recovered.
The only ones that was recovered during that, like I said earlier, was the $400,000 that we received so far from FEMA on the EMPG and on the HHGP. As far as what was the reason for those other costs that are not being reimbursed, I don't have more information than that as far as why they were denied or de-obligated from us.
And of the $40 million, about half have documentation being reviewed currently.
About half right now. Actually, we have all the documentation. We have not gone in and reviewed on the others. So, you know, the EMPG and the HHGP also. We have just maybe additional more information from Homeland. We'll be able to get those numbers or documents to FEMA so they can review that. But today we have not received anything from FEMA, any additional reimbursements.
Esther, Joe says he's been there since 2023. What other assistance have you received from BBMR, DOA, or the governor's office in terms of detailed appointments with fiscal capabilities to reconcile these issues?
Sir, not a matter or in the form of detail, but in the form of guidance and advice. You know, pick up the phone, write an email, send the questions directly to we have a financial analyst that's assigned specifically to Homeland Security, and that is King Guerrero. And we consult and confer, and we do whatever we can with him. So that's on a regular basis. And then with the Department of Administration, it's also the same procedure. Regarding federal grants, we communicate with, of course, Mr. Byrne, and then our analyst that we conduct business with on a regular basis is Christina Ilagan. And so we have regular people, assigned people at both BBMR and DOA to help us get through the eaches and the rough spots when we don't understand or we need help with managing our grants.
Other than Joe, in your time at the helm, have you ever had an administrative services officer?
So, sir, there was an administrative services officer when I came on board in June of 2023. So what you see here is the class of 2023 right here at your table. And there was an administrative services officer when I came on board. Unfortunately, we do not have an administrative services officer right now assigned to us.
You know, Esther, I'm just going to make this point, and I'm not going to put it on your shoulders, but I've run agencies as small as $3.5 million of annual appropriations, and we have an ASO. I mean, in a time when we're trying to recover or at least justify $40 million of question costs so that we don't get left on the hook for it, and at a time right now when this really is strictly here, 3 years of compliance monitoring before we even see the light of day, I'm sorry, but I find that unacceptable. I think that you should, after today, get an ASO. Somebody who's going to definitely be the point person to nag DOA and BBMR to ensure that you accelerate this timeline.
Sir, I couldn't agree with you more. And as I said earlier, it's amazing what people will do to respond to things that are urgent. And right now, my all-purpose person is Miss Lucy, who is sitting to my left, and she's also our grants manager. And she handles the majority of the ASO work at Homeland, in conjunction, of course, with Mr. Cabana's finance team that is in place down at Homeland. And this is how we get the day-to-day business done, Senator. And it's working so far, and we're going to continue to work, and we're going to continue to do what we need to do to satisfy the requirements and to do our job so that it's worthy for the people of Guam.
Thank you, Esther. It says in the background and rationale stated in the May 2012, 2026 letter, in 2025, several staff members were indicted for alleged misuse of federal funds. Is that public information?
Sir, that news was public information, and I believe that was in the paper, out on social media. So if you're asking that, so yes, sir, I believe that is public information.
Several members?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. The reason why I bring this up once again, the importance of this, and I do commend you for the due diligence that's being applied at this point in time. But just for the record, requirements to lift restrictions. The restrictive drawdown status will remain in effect until the following conditions are met. Bullet point 1, all corrective actions and question costs from 2023 Premier Group audit are fully resolved. All areas of non-compliance for FEMA monitoring are fully resolved. 3 consecutive years of enhanced monitoring and completed with no findings. And the 4th bullet point here is the validate the VAYGO improper payment error rate is reduced to 1.5% or less over 3 consecutive testing cycles. FEMA will provide written confirmation once these requirements have been satisfied and will then consider removing restricted drawdown status. So I just draw the attention, Ms. Esther, because it's more than just the aforementioned, at least what I heard during the opening statement, of the consecutive years, 3 consecutive years of enhanced monitoring, pretty comprehensive, and so we'll continue to provide whatever assistance we can from the Office of Finance and Budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Senator Duenas. Senator Perez, you're recognized for 5 minutes on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the panel here today. So yeah, I'm just going through these documents for the first time, and so I'm seeing, basically my questions will be past and, the current and future efforts. So in going, I guess, my colleagues have pointed out the question costs, and that's been public since the audits have come out. And so one of them was in regards to personnel, and in the letter that's provided to the committee, it states that of the 1.1 million claims, this was a May 7th, 2025 letter, that only 200 of the $1.1 million claimed by Guam Homeland Security, only 280,000 was actually awarded. And so it states that the documentation was lacking. There was a system of internal controls, need to provide reasonable assurance that charges are accurate. And so I noticed in your corrective action, which was approved in January of 2026, looking at it, it states that the methodology for, it looks like, I believe, if you can, brief me on what are you doing to address this, issue with the documentation of reimbursement of payroll?
So for Senator Lucy Perez, for payroll and for all personnel costs, and I'm happy to report that as recently as our meeting with FEMA regarding our EMPG side of the house, which has majority of our personnel costs, at 6:30 in the morning, Friday the 13th, Friday the 12th, they were very happy on what steps we took to fix this problem. So the step actually started on April 2024, I believe was the date the HSA gave, where a new timesheet was created. And in that timesheet, it not only listed the personnel, their salary, their annual salary, but also what grants that their time would be allocated to. And what it did was it also gave out a percentage. And then every pay period, when the personnel works on a grant, for example, Homeland Security, if you had one personnel who got paid 50% from the Homeland Security grant and 50% from the Emergency Management grant, they would have to identify each day and then the hour time frame, which grant, and then under which grant, what project. And then there was a description side. And no longer are the personnel allowed to just put, oh, I worked on HSGP 22. That gets rejected. It goes back and it says, what did you do? I worked on Project 1. Well, show me what you did in Project 1. If Project 1 said, enhancing cybersecurity, what did you do to enhance cybersecurity? So once that's all identified, the employee has to sign off on their own timesheet. I know everyone does that, but that really needed to happen so that the employee themselves also were held responsible and they knew what their job roles were. Came over to the finance team, the payroll team, which is comprised of a payroll entry clerk, myself, the HSA, and Mr. Cabana. And we take a look at it. Mr. Cabana and I even go in and look at systems, the GFMIS system, to see if there's money still on the grant that they're identifying. And so it's ready, so when that payroll is completed, when the employee's paid and payroll processes their labor distribution costs, we take that, we get ready, we attach it to the timesheet, and when called upon, then we submit over to our grantor. So that's one of the many steps that we've taken to ensure that that finding is addressed and corrected.
Senator, if I may, I can also add on to that. So what we have in place now that did not exist then is we have authorizing officials and certifying officers who sign off on these timesheets, and they are the only ones authorized to do so. So we actually have an appointment letter that's provided to Department of Administration and BBMR, and the implied task is if you don't see a signature on one of these people who are authorized to certify or to sign off, then reject it. But it never leaves Homeland Security without an approving officer's signature or the certifying officer's signature. So those are just some examples, or an example of an internal control measure that we had to implement immediately. That was at the recommendation of FEMA, and we took heed to it right away, and we've been consistent in ensuring that timesheets and the work that's done with it are associated with what the grants allow.
Joe, did you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Yes, we do, like the HSA had mentioned, we do have a better control as far as tracking numbers to our FMAS system, as well as to manual tracking, because as you know, FMAS does not record all the information by the end of each month. So we do also track it manually as well to make sure that we have all the numbers are there and make sure within the perimeter as far as what's being obligated and what was awarded.
So there's no coordination with the federal grants that you're getting in the FMIS system that we have in the government? That's not in our system?
There is the grants management within the FMIS systems, yes, but we also, for me, I like to track it manually as well, because our agency knows what we spent each payroll, and also what we provide each when we submit our payments on our invoices. So I like to track it as well manually. So for me, I want to make sure where we're at as far as the funding source and how much expenditure we have to date.
When will you be assured that the FMIS system is running accurately?
For me, compared to the AS400, I work a lot better with the new FMAS. It's giving me a better information and better tracking as well.
Okay, thank you. The other thing that I'm reading here is the restrictive drawdown on FEMA grants, and it lists a whole bunch of grants here. In one of the letters, it was dated May 12, 2026. And so some of the grants, so I'll just read it so the public knows: Chemical Stockpile Emergency Preparedness Grant, Emergency Management Performance Grants, Regional Catastrophic Preparedness Grant, emergency operations centers, and that's for preparedness. And there's a whole bunch for mitigation, building resilient infrastructure in communities, community assistance program, cooperating technical partners, earthquake consortium, and state support, flood mitigation, assistance, hazard mitigation, national dam safety, pre-disaster mitigation, and then there's recovery grants, crisis counseling, disaster case, fire management, and public assistance. Are these all the grants that you manage, or are there others outside of this?
Senator, no, these are not all the grants that we manage. Out of this list here, I can actually tell you there are 5 that are mentioned in here specifically. And another grant that we also manage is Homeland Security grants, which is not listed as one of the grants to be on restrictive drawdown. In addition to that, we also have what we call the tsunami, a tsunami readiness grant, and we manage that as well. So the list is not all inclusive, but there are at least 5 grants that are mentioned on this list that we manage, in addition to the other 2 that I just mentioned.
Okay, and so the restrictive drawdown, does that delay reimbursements to the agencies that request or need utilize the funding?
Senator, to answer your question, no, it does not delay. What it is it's a control measure used by FEMA to ensure that what we're doing is actually reimbursable and allowable. So we've been under a restrictive drawdown since the class of 23 has been in place. So it's nothing new to what we're doing, and like Ms. Lucy had mentioned earlier, for example, the Homeland Security grants, if we want to charge anything to any of the investment justifications in that grant, Ms. Lucy has to contact our grants management or our grants manager who manages Homeland Security grants. She has to provide a legitimate justification as to why we are asking to use the money for this particular project. And then his name is Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell has to actually put in writing that he approves the use of funds for, let's say, training, or let's say a project that we want to, or personnel. So that is just one of the ways we have been practicing just across grants, and that's just specific to Homeland Security grants. With our emergency management grants, we are in constant communication with the EMPG folks who help us go through each of the investment justifications, and the procedure is similar. However, we don't unilaterally just make a decision to use any of the grant funding without first conferring and consulting with our management teams, both in the emergency management and Homeland Security. And in addition to that, with public assistance, hazard mitigation, our tsunami grants. So we are in very close contact. It's all about relationships, Senator. We have established really good relationships with our FEMA grants division, both for Homeland Security and emergency management. And then in addition to that, to include public assistance and the tsunami grant program and our hazard mitigation program.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is it's approved before you spend the money. It's approved through the FEMA.
That is correct.
Okay.
From 2023 forward.
Okay, and so we hear about delayed in funding or FEMA reimbursements, and so what do you attribute that to?
On our part, if there's any delay in reimbursements, it's on us. It's probably either documentation that was not submitted, or the documentation submitted did not pass muster. So for example, personnel costs, which you brought up. If I had submitted a bunch of timesheets for 4 pay periods and I didn't identify each timesheet to a specific grant, to a specific project with specific description, it will get bounced back. And so that's the time, that's what will be the delay. But once FEMA approves the reimbursement, it's a matter of 5 business days, and sometimes even shorter, because as soon as they give us the letter authorizing federal programs to download the amount, it happens. So unfortunately, it's on us, and that's why we've improved process, and we're working towards making sure that anything that happens in the future will be better.
So the corrective action that was approved, does it address all the lack of documentation for these FEMA reimbursements? And if you can highlight which of these part of the corrective action plan does that, and maybe provide an example to the committee.
Thank you for that question, Senator. For the majority of those, Senator, it involves the emergency management performance grants and the Homeland Security grants.
Okay, and so as far as the corrective action, so Lucy was saying that we don't get reimbursed sometimes because the documentation is inadequate. And so what in this correction active plan addresses that lack of documentation?
That will be findings 2023-02 that deals with the timesheets. So in there it identified what the audit found and what the implementation and what the agency is doing. Again,
okay.
SOP, et cetera.
Oh yeah, I understand. I understand you're doing a great job. It looks like you have it covered with as far as personnel. But is there anything else that is at risk of not being reimbursed besides personnel costs in the reimbursement that you see?
I would say, based on all the grants that I've read, if it's not written into the grant, it would be for basic operations, maintenance costs. So for example, generator maintenance, elevator maintenance, fuel tank storage maintenance, vehicle maintenance. Those are some of the items that are may or may not be covered in the grant if it's not written in. If it is written in the grant and isn't approved, then there shouldn't be an issue. But I do have to say also that what I've noticed in grants moving forward is a lot of the maintenance costs is being removed. They're putting it on the state or the territory to take care of that. And the monies, though, are being put into projects, which is right. So if you're going to have a project to improve your emergency operations center, then it's taking maybe those maintenance costs and putting it towards the EOC.
So does that mean the state has to find the funding for that?
Yes, ma'am, which is why we submitted a budget request, a budget digest, and we are currently working with OFB in answering some of their questions. And in that budget digest, you would see my maintenance costs, or our maintenance costs, I'm sorry. I'm protective of my things that I need to fix.
No, I appreciate your diligence. Okay, in regards to, so like, I mean, I'm hearing the mayor's, GPA hasn't been reimbursed, for significant amounts. What is the status? GPA probably controls their own reimbursement, is that correct? Or does Office of Homeland?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Senator, again for that question. If it relates to the public assistance grants that was already been awarded by FEMA, because in the past, a lot of our concern or our challenges are documentation. So if they don't submit documentation for reimbursements, then we under public assistance, we try to assist our subrecipients to see what documentations need to be submitted. So our biggest challenge is our documentation, that they have not, that they can either provide documentation for the reimbursement request, or it's just no information from them. But we are communicating together with the POC as well as the respective directors or mayors to be able to provide us those documents. But we have the money. It's just to give us all the documentation, and then they'll get the reimbursements.
Okay, so you're waiting for the documentation.
Documentation is our biggest challenge on these.
Okay, and then in regards to like planning for future, I guess, disasters, and I'm thinking, specifically like, let's say, cybersecurity. Has your agency been doing the market research, looking at the cost of, preventing these kind of attacks, as well as, our traditional disasters? What is your plan for that in regards to procurement?
Thank you, Senator. That's a very pointed question. And yes, ma'am, we are working very closely with the Office of Technology to maintain, sustain, and develop further cybersecurity plans. We currently have a island-wide cybersecurity plan that will expire, I believe, at the end of this year. needs renewing. And we think of everything. We think of, and just now we're getting a deluge of cyber threats. We work very closely with the FBI, with NCIS, with CISA, to work collaboratively so that we could all be in sync with any threats that we need to be aware of. And I think our greatest challenge is updating and providing the necessary software to protect our technological infrastructure. What we've done is we've grown in the government, but I think our growth in the government has outpaced OTEC's stability and capability to provide adequate cybersecurity protection to our government of Guam systems. With the Office of Homeland Security, we work in conjunction with the Office of Technology to come up with innovative ways on how we can build the workforce, how we can provide the necessary media, how we can be more innovative in thinking about cybersecurity. And then we also, you can't forget that there's something called artificial intelligence that seems to just weave its way around cybersecurity. And our greatest challenge is identifying the workforce to counter that. We have antiquated systems, and I'll say this for myself, an antiquated person on board that needs to get in front of the cybersecurity platform to include the artificial intelligence phenomenon. But we are definitely looking at ways to get in front of that, talking with interested employees who might want to seek a career in cyber. I'm happy to report that the Office of Homeland Security, every quarter we host cybersecurity training, and we get it free. It's a free service, and we are offering 2 classes now at the end of this month, and both classes already have a waiting list of 40+ people. So it goes, the classes fill up very quickly. We conduct those trainings now over at our Office of Homeland Security, and definitely the public is interested. We open it to government of Guam workers first, but if there's room, we also open it to the private sector. We try not to turn anyone away, but these are just some ways we're leaning forward to posture ourselves to look at that kind of a disaster, if you will, that kind of threat, because it's involved in an all hazards alert plan.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm looking at some of the documents here. It talks about the quarterly reports for, I believe, hazard mitigation. So is it possible to get copies of your quarterly reports sent to the committee?
Ma'am, I would defer that question to Mr. Cabana.
Thank you, HSA. Yes, we can provide those documentations, it's quarterly reports. Depending, also we need to make that request to FEMA, since they are federal partners and they're the ones our grantee. So we would also make that request via FEMA.
Okay, and then going back to procurement. So how many are fully trained in the local procurement and then the federal procurement? I'm sure you have to know both sides. So how many staff are fully trained in both types of procurement?
My number is 4, but Ms. Lucy's doing the calculations in her head, and I think she's going to probably come up with the correct answer.
So for the FEMA 200 CFR, we have approximately 6 individuals from OHS, OCD, GRO, Guam Recovery Office. And this was the class last year in August. In terms of the procurement module, we have probably about 7 individuals who have completed Module 1, Procurement Module 1, maybe about 2 or 3 that just finished Module 2 from the GRO group, and we are on schedule for the next class that can happen. It's really hard to get into procurement module training. I mean, that class fills up because it's not just us. So we beg each time to please let 1 or 2 people in. But that is one of the items that is critical for our agencies, that individuals that monitor, that handle, that are in finance, are procurement trained and FEMA trained.
I think that's great that the CPO is there
Yes.
on there to help kind of
Yes,
make
she
sure
is.
things are done
Yeah.
very effectively. And so like the DLAN system, it's, you know, is it what you need, you automatically put it in and you automatically, or you get it expeditiously?
Right, so the DLAN system is operational. It worked, I mean, Sinlaco, if I have to have a storm that really sets up what could really happen well, it was Sinlaco. We had the CPO in our office the whole time. She had her buyer back at the office doing their work. Whatever the ESF, the emergency support function for the agency, say health or police or fire needed, they would enter a DLAN ticket. I mean, that was one thing that was drilled into everyone's mind, is if you need something, it has to be in DLAN. All directors knew that, all ESFs. When it's entered into the DLAN system, we would source within ourselves first, within the island. And only if we could not meet that would we go out to FEMA. Now, the sourcing within ourselves and within the island is if we needed to procure, that DLAN ticket will go over to the finance group, which is myself, Joe Cabana, Chris. There's four or five of us. We would work with the CPO and say, ma'am, we need to procure right away 4,000 sandbags. Here's a price quote. Here's my justification. She'll look at it. She'll have her team look at it. And if it passes muster, then we enter the requisition and it becomes the purchase order. So yes, the CPO, DOA was right there with us, guiding us.
And that's really great because during like the time of COVID, you know, things went a little, awry. So yeah, to have somebody knowledgeable in there making things happen efficiently, that's a good move. So I think that's it. My time has run out. I'm sure I have more questions for you guys, but thank you for your time today and your work in ensuring Guam is ready and prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perez. And let me circle back because I asked this question, and I'm going to be very pointed because it's a little troubling what I heard earlier than what you responded to Senator Perez. I'll ask again, what portion of OHS OCD staff have completed one or more of the 4 modules of procurement basic training, and has any of your personnel who are required but has not received the procurement training engaged in procurement, which is in violation of our procurement training policy? I asked on the record earlier, you said only the 2 of you are the only ones who have taken the modules, and then just 2 minutes ago, you offered that there was more than the 2 of the people at this table. Help me understand why I should be a little bit more concerned by the answer.
Your question is well received, sir, and we're just getting our numbers, straight. And I understand your frustration. So I believe my answer was 3. The 3 people at this table have completed the grants management training offered by FEMA.
No, I'm talking about the local procurement, our procurement basic training.
Okay.
It was 4 modules.
Okay.
And then at this,
Understood.
earlier you said 1 and 1. One had more than 1. And then you just, in response to the senator, you mentioned now it's up to 4. How do we go in 45 minutes? Help me understand, Lucy. Please be, you were sworn in, you're on the record, so please be very clear to this committee.
Senator, thank you for reminding me I'm on record, but I think what the HSA, when she was looking at her numbers, she was thinking about the FEMA, because she attended that one. I mean,
oh, no, I asked that.
No, I know you asked about the procurement module, but sorry, ma'am. I believe she was thinking the FEMA grants module training, because that's what she attended.
Oh, no, I was clear on that part. I'm talking about the local procurement policy.
I apologize that I was not clear on what you were clear of, sir. So now we're going to make that correction right now.
Okay, so what is the total amount? Is it what you just testified to Senator Perez? Is that correct? There's 4 current staff at the Office of Civil Defense that have 1 or more of the 4 local procurement trainings, the basic training for Gov Guam.
Yes, sir. For those that are under Homeland Security, Civil Defense, and GRO, there are. There are four trained under Procurement Module 1.
And that's the only, just level 1, and Mr. Cabana is the only
And
one
Ms.
that's at level 4.
Mr. Cabana's group has a couple of staff that just completed either before Sinlock, or actually during Sinlock, they were still attending the class in the evening. There's about 2 or 3 of them. Because we're on record, what I will do is go back and ensure that those who receive their certificates will get you a list of names for
please.
the record.
Yes, thank you for that so much. Okay, I want to recognize the attendance of our Speaker of this Guam Legislature, Speaker Frank Blas Jr. Mr. Speaker, welcome, and you are now recognized for 5 minutes regarding the cap and this issue with FEMA.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the panel for being here. I'm going to preface this by saying that I'm greatly disappointed. Okay. Ms. Agagi, you said that of the listing of grants that are on restriction, other than this listing, you have 5 grants that you currently have operation without any restrictions. What grants are those? And the amounts for each grant.
Have a day, Speaker. So, sir, the grants that are listed on this memo that we have at Homeland Security are the Emergency Management Performance Grants, the Building Resilience, Infrastructure, and Communities Grants, the Hazard Mitigation Grants, the Fire Management Assistance Grants, and the Public Assistance Grants.
Those are not restricted?
Sir, these are the grants that we are managing at Homeland Security that are listed on this restrictive drawdown status. In addition to these, not listed here are the Homeland Security grants, and then we also have a tsunami grant program that we also manage over at Homeland.
Earlier, you said that there were 5 grants that were not on restriction, other than Homeland Security Grant Program and the Tsunami Grant. Which are what are the other 3 grants?
You can answer.
The ones that are not on restriction, but follow the same process to make sure that we get reimbursed are the Homeland Security Grant, HSGP, our Tsunami, our Next Gen Communications, which was just awarded last year, our Firefighters Grant, which was just, our Firefighters Grant is different from the Fire Management Assistance. It's called AFG, which was just awarded last year, and our Cybersecurity. Those are the 5.
And how much for each grant?
I will get that list to you, but it approximately is about $9.5 million. But I can provide a list that identifies each grant. The Next Gen itself is a 3-year grant. So that's why I want to give it to you in writing so you can see the breakdown.
Okay, so of the grants that are affected, I'm referring to this letter from Mr. Fenton, I guess, on the restrictive grants. The grants that have restrictive drawdown status. Okay, can you go through each of these grants and tell me how much these grants are worth each?
Thank you, Senator. As far as the grants that were restricted, I can speak for the public assistance grants. Although the grants were awarded at $70 million, they may be restricted, but there's a different process now that that we're communicating with FEMA. Is now that we submit all our requests for reimbursements, all our disbursements, and then they review those disbursements, and then they review, and once they get authorized or approved, then we send it. They send us to me a letter saying it's been reviewed and approved, and then we submit that to DOA for reimbursement. Unlike in the past, this is just based on our last meeting after the letter from Mr. Fenton about the restrictive, and we communicate with our federal partners to find out so what are our ways to be able to get these monies drawn down. And we met with them just a couple of weeks ago, so we're doing that process now. Is have them review it first, and then we will submit the request to DOA to process the drawdown.
Okay, that's one of 16 grants. There's 15 more. Can I have the numbers for the 15?
And that also goes through the hazard mitigation, same process.
Okay, let me get this right. You said $70 million for public assistance.
Right. And
what about crisis counseling and immediate services program?
That is the grant that's being handled by Homeland.
Okay, so what are again, panel, what is the amounts, the total amounts for each of the 16 grants here?
Senator or Speaker, with all due respect, I will submit a documentation that will identify each of the grant and the total amount awarded with the period of performance.
I'd like to also know what the start date was
Period
and
of performance, again.
what the expiration date is in the grants.
Yes,
okay?
sir. Yes, sir.
So I notice here that one of the grants on restricted drawdown is the EMPG grant, but you said that HSGP is no restriction. All right. First off, how many personnel do you have? And what are their funding sources?
That's a complicated question, sir.
It shouldn't be complicated, Esther. You should have that information right here and now.
I understand that, sir, but in our unique situation, we have personnel that come and go. So I can tell you that right now we have the Guam Recovery Office, who is now embedded in the Office of Civil Defense, and so we have 22 extra bodies that are also working with us. Mr. Cabana's finance team is helping us with the finances for our grants. We don't currently have an ASO to manage that. We have Ms. Lucy, who serves as our grants manager, and then she also serves as our ASO, and then she also serves as our ESF. And so she does a number of things in order for the day-to-day operations to occur. So, you know, the consistent number we have down at Homeland Security runs anywhere between 7 to 9.
Okay, how many people do you have in your HSGP program?
Sir,
Under the HSGP program,
Yes.
we have 7 individuals that share with EMPG.
EMPG,
Yep,
they have 7, so
they're divided. Their costs are divided based on the task and the project that they work on.
combined, how many HSGP and EMPG personnel do you have? Combined.
I would say combined personnel would be approximately,
Don't give me approximate. I need to know right now what it is. If we have a disaster right now, how many
12.
personnel do you have? How many people do you have in your recovery office?
I can answer that, Senator. For the recovery office, we have about 14 people. For the, I did a budget for Homeland, and in Homeland, I went ahead and budgeted for 21 employees. Out of the 21 employees are budgeted, 5 of that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of that are vacant. And out of that vacant position under EMPG grant or EMPG or operations, we have 5 of them that's being that's vacant, and only out of the 5 of them, 13 for EMPG, 5 of that is vacant, and then under HSGP we have I have 3, and then all the others are coming like admin side is 5 under Homeland.
Okay. Lucy, you said of the combined total of HSGP and EMPG, there's 12 personnel. How many, and there's only 7 that's being funded by HSGP, so that means you have at least 5 that is funded under EMPG, yet it's under restricted drawdown. How are you paying for them? How are you paying personnel costs for them?
that would be a DOA question, sir.
That would be a, pardon
A
me?
Department Administration
That would
and
be a
BBMR question.
What is your estimate as to how much that personnel is costing you?
Mr. Cabana has that number.
I'm sorry, Senator. Under the EMPG, which is we're still pending award letter from FEMA, which is the 23 EMPG. There was an award letter, but they needed some narrative correction on the admin plan. So out of that, we've already spent about $703,000 out of the $984,776 for the EMPG.
For what fiscal year?
For fiscal year 23.
For what?
23.
How about so how do you pay for 24, 25?
24, we'll continue to pay 24 and 25 also expenditure under a grant that's no longer a performance. Until such time this grant is being approved by FEMA, then as we get it approved, then we're going to submit all our requests for drawdown. So we've already got the monies allotted for the 23, 24, and 25 EMPG grant.
How are you going to justify using funding from a different funding source, different grant, for EMPG costs?
The EMPG grant is only going to pay EMPG operations staffing. But we don't have
what specific grant are you taking money from?
No, it's taken off from a grant that's already period performance under EMPG. So right now, the way DOA obligates the monies is they're using a grant funding that's already been approved by FEMA, because as you know, BBMR will not give us. Well, we don't have any funding for sure because we're waiting for FEMA for the award letter. And although the award letter was there for the 23 EMPG, it's been approved, but we just have not gotten an award letter saying, okay, you can go ahead and submit that to your government agency as far as establishing an account. But we do have the our award letter for that.
This letter is dated May 12, 2026.
Yes, Senator Speaker. Yes, also part of the reason that this had not been submitted by FEMA yet is because of the shutdown that they recently had with the federal government that was shut down the whole office, and we had no communication as far as if this 23 already. But we did submit our admin plan with all the narrative that is needed to award the grant.
I really can't go. There are a number of questions I want to be able to ask based on personnel, how much these grants are worth, were for, and what the start and the performance dates are for these grants that are on restricted drawdown status. But I'm going to move on. Lucy, you said that you requested you're going to be requesting funding, general fund funding. For what specifically are you asking for?
I'm sorry?
You're going to be requesting for next fiscal year.
27.
For 27.
Yes, sir.
How much are you asking and what for?
$1.5 million, sir.
And what for?
It'll cover for personnel costs and basic operations, sir.
What of the 1.5 for personnel and basic operations? How much of that could have been going to the HSGP and EMPG, as well as any other grants that you had?
None of that, sir. We anticipated that question. So if there was an expense, such as travel and training, it was not put into our budget digest request because it would be grant related. If there was a project, say, such as DLAN, which is covered under EMPG, then that cost will be covered under EMPG and not local. Now, I do have to say, and this is me, that when we first submitted the budget digest, because of the uncertainty of the grants, I did put in DLAN as a backup, because DLAN is a critical system for the Emergency Operations Center. But Mr. Cabana, the HSA, and I have gone through and scrubbed and anticipated questions that may be asked, and that was one of it, is how much of this cost could you take and put into your grants and make sure that it's written in the grants. And that's the key point, is grants, expenses that the agency thinks it's going to utilize or have has to be written in the grants.
So you're telling me personnel and management and maintenance costs were not written in the grant?
No, sir, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I am saying that personnel costs at this time are divided between grants. But based on my observations, so I made a recommendation, and this is my recommendation, that personnel costs be covered under local funding. And this is one of the other reasons. The grants are very restrictive. And before anything can be done, we would have to go back and seek permission to do anything. Like if we wanted to hire a federal grants manager, we'd have to go back to the grantors and say, I'm sorry, I don't have local funds, but this is a necessity, and then have to justify it. And then we have to wait. And sometimes that can be a process. For the past year, it has been painful, and because of the shutdowns, right? But it doesn't mean that the ask didn't happen. It went in, and now that everybody's back to work for the past 3 weeks, we have been playing catch up in getting things approved.
Wouldn't a grants management person be one of your asks in your grant process to begin with?
Yes, sir, it could be one of the grants, but some of the grants, I didn't see it in, so we specifically wrote it in. Or they allocated it to a different position, like finance, like ASO, which shouldn't be. It should be specific. You need to have a grants person.
So you
manager.
asked for money for a certain position.
Yes, sir.
And then when you got it, you got the permission. Oh, I don't want that position. I want another position.
Oh, I don't know what they did back then, sir, but 23 forward and what I've worked on, I can tell you what I've asked for.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Ms. Aggie, you mentioned that you have some challenges in your cybersecurity. Okay, explain to me first off, what's going on with your Mariana Fusion Center?
So the two are related, sir.
Yes.
However, the relationship between the two is so the grants. So the Fusion Center doesn't manage the cybersecurity grants. I manage the cybersecurity grants, and then the Fusion Center receives funding from the cybersecurity grants to conduct the business. So we are on hold, for lack of a better term, with our cybersecurity grants. We've already had two desk audits with our cybersecurity grants, even though we haven't spent 1 penny from a grant that was awarded to us back in 2023. And we have consulted with our cybersecurity grants management team, and they want more definite explanation of what projects that we plan to implement with the cybersecurity grants. And we were headed to a project, and then the government furlough happened. And as a result of that, we are now back on the rotating time frame to meet back up with our cybersecurity grants management team so that we can finally submit a project, working closely with CISA to get the project approved so that we can finally see some funding drawn down so that we can finally use the cybersecurity grant that was granted to us back in 23. The Fusion Center operates, so luckily the analysts that are assigned to the Fusion Center are there on assignment from their agencies. So their salaries come from their agencies. The only person or the only position that supposedly funded out of the Homeland Security Grant Program is the director of the Mariana Region Fusion Center. We have asked our grants manager to approve that position, and that feedback, we have not received an approval on that request as of yet. And a lot of it had to do with the government shutdown. And like us, they too are catching up on things that were left dormant in the last 3 months.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Marianas Fusion Center. How's that operating?
So the Fusion Center is operating on a day-to-day basis. They are looking at law enforcement specific materials, and they are providing whatever threat assessment is necessary. For example, if the Guam Visitors Bureau asked if they could do a threat vulnerability assessment on the Tumon night market, they will send their analysts out to do the research that's necessary to come up with a threat vulnerability assessment. An event coming up that is one of Guam's biggest celebrations is the Liberation Day Parade. There's a request for the Fusion Center to do a threat vulnerability assessment to see if there's anything that we should be aware of law enforcement specific, that could happen during that occasion. So they're still operating on on the analysts that are there. And
okay, under what space are they operating, and how do they store your information? Some of that information is above sensitive. So how do you store it, and who's got access to it?
Well, sir, we cannot store classified information at a facility that is not an approved facility. So we don't have an approved space at Homeland Security to store classified information.
That's kind of interesting, Esther, because why don't you have an approved space? Okay? You do have a SCIF.
Sir,
I know, I built it.
It's not a SCIF, sir.
What
it's
is
not a SCIF. It's a secure room.
Okay, so you have a secure room. What happened?
Well, that room was decertified, unbeknownst to us, and it still remains uncertified or decertified. It's lost its accreditation. I've been working with the Fusion Center Director, Rudy Gaza, to talk with the point of contact from that inspection team to respond to some questions we had. Like, for example, how did that secure room pass inspections in the years past and not pass in this last inspection? That question has not been answered yet. In anticipation of maybe a recertification or reaccreditation, I've asked the Fusion Center Director to come up with a scope of work so that maybe we can look at fortifying that space if, in fact, it did fail inspection, and come up with a plan on how we're going to rectify that. So they're working on that, Senator.
Which goes back to the question, how do you store and manage secure information?
Sir, we do not keep secure information at our facility.
Half your programs here require secure storage. Half your programs here. Your Homeland Security grant program.
Sir, are you saying that our Homeland Security grant program requires a secure facility?
No, it needs secure access so you can provide receive and store secure information. Tell me I'm wrong, Esther.
Sir, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I am saying that the information on our Homeland Security grant program, is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm talking about the operations of the Homeland Security grant program. There are going to be times that you're going to need to access, and you're going to need to receive secure information and act on it.
And we do so with our partners with the FBI and with Joint Region Marianas.
I only have a little time, so I'm going to move on to the next question. Asset management. Who handles your asset management program in the facility? And when I talk about asset management, because Lucy, you refer to, you look to when DLAN, when there's a request for materials and supplies and whatnot, okay? You look in-house as to whether or not you've got it. Do you have a program that keeps that up to date, your asset management? What do you have within the government facilities, your government inventory, and what you have in the private sector inventory? Yes or no?
What I've seen is that OHS OCD does have a asset program which is also called a resource typing
Okay.
in the FEMA language, right? In the ICS course. And that's stored in DLAN and it's updated. Who works on it and who manages it? It is between the logistics team, the ops chief, and the planning chief.
Okay.
Because they need to understand what we have first within and what other agencies have that we can source or utilize.
Okay. Do you have an asset management program that you can rely on if it was a disaster in the next hour?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have them, even if it's an Excel program, there is a program. There is a plan.
And it's up to date.
And it is up to date.
Okay.
As of Sinlaco up to date. Maybe when I go back and I look at something and we may have decommissioned something, I might have to update it again. But as of Sinlaco, yes, sir, we do.
Okay. I notice I'm done with time, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Speaker. So first off, I want to thank you all for being with us this morning. And let me just say this, that the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and the Guam National Guard absolutely appreciates your participation in today's much needed discussion concerning Guam's emergency management services. But a lesson from history, if I can today. In the 20th century, America wielded a strength best used in the service of peace. It was as true then as it must remain today in 2026. But strength must be continuous and focused when the enemy changes, and in the 21st century and beyond, the enemy has certainly changed. The enemy I am referring to is not some adversary that came our way when this modern emergency management system was stood up. Complacency is the enemy of progress. FEMA's decision to place all grants on restrictive drawdown status should not be taken lightly. Since our collective swearing in, this committee has recognized FEMA's decision to be consistent with the federal government's ongoing efforts to safeguard federal taxpayer dollars through stronger fiscal controls, reservation of critical resources for truly significant events, and a recognition that states and territories should invest more local resources into disaster mitigation, response, and recovery. Accordingly, the committee recommends for those who are currently in charge that you all have a mandate to manage federal and local resources effectively, ensuring transparency and accountability and avoiding unauthorized expenditures moving forward. In closing, I would like to share with you all a response that I provided recently to a local news organization when asked about what coordination or oversight that this committee has reviewed or directed regarding plans to protect Guam's civilian population in case of an attack. My response was that the oversight hearings that are conducted by this committee are focused on the administration of emergency management programs which have exposed systemic problems, to include a lack of staff and unresolved audit concerns with federally funded programs to support specific attack planning efforts. Simply put, our preparedness and collective ability to respond and recover from known and emerging threats are directly linked to how federal and local resources are in fact managed. Strengthening Guam's existing all hazards warning system, establishing or building up individual and family disaster supplies, scheduling school, workplace, and community-wide drills, and other preparedness efforts require resources and coordination. Our partnership with FEMA remains critical to our preparedness efforts, and therefore it is imperative that the government of Guam does its part to demonstrate good stewardship of federal funds. With that said, the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and your Guam National Guard appreciates the attendance and participation of all the senators and department officials in this respective public hearing Today's oversight hearing is hereby adjourned. The time is now 10:30 a.m. tomorrow Standard Time. Thank you all for being with us today.